am excited to have Dani Donovan with me today on the Autism ADHD podcast. She is a multifaceted internet content creator, public speaker, and ADHD comic artist. Known for her viral comics, she has created so much ADHD awareness and acceptance. And as the author of The Anti-Planner and the founder of the Anti-Boring Project, she leverages her expansive social media following to make everyday challenges like productivity and organization more achievable and a lot more fun. Take it from me, it's true. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, Washington Post, BBC News, Forbes, and all kinds of major publications. She continues to break stigma around ADHD and create real and practical resources for people with executive functioning challenges. All right, let's dive in. Welcome, Dani Donovan, to the Autism ADHD podcast.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We were loving talking before we even hit record. We are going to talk about executive functioning. We hear this all the time. Executive functioning is hard. When you have a kid, a teen, and they're procrastinating, they're forgetting their homework, they're leaving their stuff everywhere. Yesterday, I left all the kitchen cabinet doors open. I didn't remember.
I didn't even notice doing it.
Go get in my car and I'll get out of the driveway and realize that I don't have my glasses or I didn't take my medicine. These are serious things that impact everything. Let's jump in to that little powerful word because it impacts mental health. What's the magic, Dani?
The magic of why?
The magic of why. Exactly. Why so important is because if you don't know why something is happening, why something is hard, the child and the teen are broken. They're the problem. And that's where the blame goes.
Exactly. I think that such a huge thing that people don't realize when they are either working with people with ADHD, raising kids with ADHD, is that so much of our experience boils down to being misunderstood. So many of us feel isolated and people aren't trying to take time to see where we're coming from, but like we might not even recognize or realize it ourselves. For such a long time, I didn't understand myself. And so many of us kind of like don't know why we're doing what we're doing and we can't stop doing it, and it's distressing. It's distressing for the people around us, but it's also distressing for us. Whenever I said like, "Oh my gosh, you think you're frustrated with me? I'm frustrated with myself 24/7. I have to live here." and so the maybe 23/7. But I kind of have learned now as I've navigated my own ADHD journey that like I made such huge progress towards self-forgiveness and just like I was like hating myself less, but like being less angry at myself all of the time when I was able to kind of step back and be more objective instead of it feeling like a personal defect, being like, why does this keep happening? And if I can figure out why, if I can figure out the problem, then I can actually work towards finding a solution.
Because if you don't understand the problem, you will think you're the problem. The child is the problem, not how we're approaching it, not how the assignment is set up, not how the environment is set up. We are so much more likely to blame the child instead of getting curious what's happening, what's the barrier there, what's getting in the way.
Trying harder is not a strategy.
All right, say it again. We need to hear it again.
Trying harder is not a strategy.
Try harder. If I had a dime, I would be rich.
Able to pay for all that therapy.
It is so powerful to be able to say, I was trying harder than anyone could possibly imagine, yet being told you're not. Did you feel that way? Like, I am trying.
The comparison aspect of how easy things look for other people and how much people who don't struggle, even if they don't mean to be condescending or patronizing, or, if they don't struggle, they can't imagine what it would be like to struggle. Yes, we might be running the same race, but if I show up and I had to run a 5K before I even got to the starting line just to get myself to the race, I'm already tired when I'm there. And so now we might run the same thing, but I'm going to poop out faster, right? I didn't come with the same level of energy. I even go further to say, like, I don't have shoes. So, like, it's painful the whole way. Sometimes getting things like meds might like be helpful, but they're still flip-flops. Like, they're not the same. Again, not that people who aren't neurodivergent don't struggle with things. I'm not trying to say that at all. But the reality is that they might not understand how exhausting it is for us and how our energy gets depleted and how painful it feels, and our brains are wired to like avoid that pain.
Well, everyone's is.
Mm-hmm.
All humans, whether you're neurodivergent, neurotypical, why would you want to? You want to get away from pain. You want to get
Mm-hmm.
away from suffering. You want to get away from criticism.
If we are at the point where we've had bad experiences, I had a bad experience, I got criticized for this, or I went into something and I wasn't prepared and I embarrassed myself. And so now I'm going to just like avoid, avoid, avoid. So the understanding other people and understanding yourself comes from, right, asking that why question. So much of this stuff is just invisible. You don't think about it unless you stop to think about it. And even then, introspection takes a lot of work. People are like, "You're so talented at this." I'm like, "I've had a lot of therapy." It's difficult even to, expect people to be able to be good at that kind of line of thinking right away if they don't have models and examples for what it actually looks like.
And also be given permission to even say, this is hard because
Mm,
this is hard. No, it's not.
it's not
It's
that
like,
hard.
wait, wait.
Yeah, it's not that hard for you.
It's not that hard for you. I always come back to if it was easy, they would just do it
Yeah.
and they don't have to hear you nag
Hmm.
because you don't want to nag. I get it. I don't want to as a parent either.
The interesting thing, so right, a lot of us are able to have the sort of like different lines of thinking. I'm say thinking differently, that divergent thinking where either spotting things people might not, but like having ideas. I am just a fountain of ideas, and people are like, "Oh, you're so creative." And it would be like telling someone to be more creative. Like, to just be more creative. It's not a thing that you can just like, "Oh, okay, let me just like turn on my internal button that makes me more creative." Being creative is different than being artistic. Art is like a skill. You can sit down and like learn the skill, and that might help, you can build some creativity muscles. But that is a thing that I am naturally born with that someone else might not be naturally born with. You can't just tell someone to be different if that's not how they're wired.
You're right. It is approached that way. Like somehow it's optional.
Mm.
When you use that example, and I love that you did because I think we might be related in some way, ideas. I could, from here, a yard away, I could come up with 1,000 easy.
Hmm.
Not everyone can do that, like you said, but that beautiful strength is not the one that people are interested in when you're younger
Hmm. Sit
because
down and do your homework.
just do it. When you have all these ideas, your brain is getting constantly hijacked away from something that is usually pretty boring and not nearly as exciting as your ideas are.
And I find that especially early on, right, but when you're in school and when you're in work, that's where so many people focus on when ADHD symptoms are impacting them. They're annoying, you're annoying me, but like someone's not living up to external expectations. Recently, we're talking so much more about the internal experience of living with ADHD, the emotions of living with ADHD, the social aspect, the stuff that isn't just how is it impacting work or school, because those external things of how they impact other people is really where the focus goes. Change this about yourself. You are not living up to expectations.
if we're talking about school, here's a curriculum that's rolled out in front of you, do it. Right. And we were talking about this before we hit record and decided we should hit record because we just kept talking and we both forgot about it. So
We had a little 20-minute podcast pre-podcast.
it was the pre podcast, two ADHDers trying to remember to hit record. It's fantastic. This idea where it's the knowing and the doing, this separation, you know better.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason you can't do this. Like you said, there's no reason you can't be super creative.
Logic brain is so much different than like actual brain in the same way that when I'm having a feeling that I don't want to have, and I can therapy logic, I can know why I shouldn't feel that way. And it doesn't make me stop feeling that way. Knowing that you should be, I would say epitome of like perfect therapy knowledge, but being able to know I could write you a blog post about all of the reasons why this is a distorted way of thinking, but it does not make it easier to change a feeling. That's not something that you totally have like control over. Again, logic brain, emotion brain, logic brain, executive dysfunctioning brain are not always aligned.
The teachers, the parents, they're growing up with their own expectations. Parents are stressed because school is calling or emailing.
Mm.
The teacher has a bunch of kids in their classroom and they're overwhelmed. They're just trying to get through the curriculum. There's so much on everyone, but it all lands on the child. Do you find that? Like, if they would
Uh,
just do what they're supposed to.
Yes, I would add that, especially since prior generations were not like it's difficult now, but the access and the awareness and the accommodations, every generation you go back was less existent and less existent and less existent. And so you've got a lot of people who might have kids who are neurodivergent who may or may not know that they are neurodivergent themselves since it's super hereditary, right? And they had to suck it up and get through it. They were not given the accommodations. So it's like, if I had to do it, then you should be able to do it because they might not realize how many coping skills they have built from not having help. That you built, yes, you built muscles because you were walking around with a 50-pound backpack. And that doesn't mean that that's how everybody else has to be. I found that now with my parents talking over the years of like how much stuff they just had to brute force their way through. And that was painful, but they know it's possible because they eventually kind of like came to that thing. It can be challenging, I think, if people there's people who don't know it's hard, who are kind of saying these things, and there's people who genuinely might have executive dysfunction themselves, but they had to kind of push through that pain and they think that that's how you're supposed to do it. That's the only way to do it.
Right. And that's what they know at the
Mhm.
time. They didn't have podcasts like this.
Parents weren't learning about executive functioning.
No, what was executive functioning?
Yeah.
Right? Nobody talked about it. I love that you brought that up because I think it's this default setting we go to is what was it like for me? And you're right. ADHD is very much linked to genetics. And thinking about, well, I had ADHD too, and I was able to do it. Not everyone with ADHD is the same.
Oh my God, the experience difference. I have a hard time keeping a space tidy for long. I love when things are tidy. I will make it a big project. I will organize everything. Everything is great. And then it like slowly just builds back to chaos. And
Mm-hmm.
there are people with ADHD who don't struggle with that as much, or like hygiene or like there are certain areas that executive dysfunction isn't as difficult for them, but they might have struggled in school in a way that I did not struggle in school. And so it's very easy when people are like, well, I made a TikTok video of a long time ago about all the like abandoned beverage containers in my house because there was this trend going around where people were like, things in my eco-friendly home that just make sense. And then they were like showing off all of their like stuff. And I did things in my ADHD home that just don't make sense. And or that just makes sense. And mine was just don't make sense. And so I was showing like there's probably moldy coffee inside. And people go, that's not ADHD, that's just lazy. right? I have ADHD and there's no way that that would ever happen. I have ADHD and I don't do that. There's some ADHD on ADHD, I'll say like crime happening. There are people who are neurodivergent who are having such different experiences and can fall into that same line of thinking of it's not hard for me, so it shouldn't be hard for you.
Exactly. They have this idea that it should be this way because I had to. But then it's that adult learning what
Mm-hmm.
they needed. What did you need that you didn't get?
Mm-hmm.
What did you need to say that no one would listen to? What did you wish someone knew about you instead
That's
of
the
you feeling like you're the worst? You should try harder. We talked about this before I hit record too, is the word lazy makes me physically ill.
I have tried my best now to eliminate it from my vocabulary. I definitely don't say it about anybody else. I've very much like reduced by like 99% my tendency to think about myself or like refer to myself as like I'm just being lazy. I'll stop and I'm like, nope. And I will like it when I hear it come out of my own mouth, which does not happen very often anymore. But like I was retraining my brain, and anytime I heard myself say it, I would stop and like think about why I was referring to myself that way, and I would literally make myself pause and go back and be like, what is actually happening? Which does tie back to the why factor of the like, I feel lazy. What is it that's actually happening? Why is this actually happening? And why am I feeling this way? And so it could be like, oh, I'm just lazy because I'm not, picking up my beverage containers. And it's like, why is this happening? And to stop and go, okay, I am doing this because there's many different reasons going on, but one of the main things that I have found is that tidying does not, sometimes I forget about it. I just like walk away and forget this stuff existed. Like you were kind of talking about having the cupboards open. I either don't notice it and forget about it, or I am like, oh, I'll get to that later, just the avoiding. But a lot of the time it's realizing that I get such big, I don't know, it's like dopamine hits, but like I get feel good chemicals from like a big cleaning spree because it's
Mm,
now a project and I have the before and after, I have the gratification. Tiny little bouts of tidying maintenance does not do that for me. The maintenance always seems like something that can be put off until it reaches that anxiety threshold of like, oh my God, I have to do something. But being able to sort of stop and go, there's a reason this is happening. And it's not that personal defect. It's not that like that lazy factor. Because I think lazy always typically goes back to I'm not meeting expectations. Even if there's
yes.
societal expectations, no one's here to see this coffee mug on my desk. This is not a biohazard. I don't have a kid that's coming up and like drinking it. But being able to notice that some of it's about judgment. So much of the word lazy is tied up in that judgment.
It is. Why are we criticizing someone who doesn't walk through the world in the same way? When you don't process it with why and understanding, you're going to continue to do things that do not work and are not helpful. Like you're not trying hard enough, you're lazy, you don't care. You're never going to be able to live on your own if you can't do this way. It just is heavy. I don't think adults think about that as much as they should. Let's do something different. Because if you continue again to do the same thing and expect this thing that's not going to happen,
Otherwise,
hey,
it's the definition of insanity, right? Of like doing the same thing and expecting something to change over and over and over again. Has berating your child or berating yourself fixed the problem? Has it ever fixed the problem? And if it's not, it's time to try something else.
yeah, you are not a bad parent. You're just doing the best you can.
Yeah.
Here's a kid who's doing the best they can. Let's figure out how we can do this in a way that is actually helpful. And that's
Hmm.
the why, being open to it, right? Being open to the why. That also helps interactions, not only the child's mental health, but really the parent's mental health too. It's not easy to be constantly overwhelmed because this is messy or this isn't done. That's not good for parents either.
Mm-mm.
When we think about the why, that's hard because we're questioning everything,
Mm.
what we've been taught, how things are supposed to be going. What does that look like? Anytime we step away and question, sometimes people don't like when you question.
Oh my God, I feel that in my bones. That's what I got in trouble with the most when I was a kid, right? Was just like asking questions all the way back to in kindergarten. We had like a police officer come with like a canine like dog and they asked if anybody had questions and I asked, why do dogs smell each other's butts? Right? And which I got in trouble and they told my mom and I was being like inappropriate because all the kids laughed and I wasn't doing it to get a laugh. They said, do you have any questions? You have a dog. This is a question I have. I don't know the answer to this. My mom goes, they probably didn't know.
I love she said that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we do that, right? We get in trouble. I remember, I think it was maybe it was fourth grade. And our science teacher kept talking about how important to use soap
Mm,
to kill germs. You need to use soap. And my cousin, big time ADHD, asked, well, don't the germs stay on the soap? She did not like it. She was like, don't ask me that question. I thought, okay, because she didn't know.
hmm The same
Yeah.
thing when you get into as an adult, you get into the workplace and it's like, why are we doing it this way? There's a better way. I have figured out the better way. I had a moment like where I had found a software for my old job that cost like 15 bucks a month and it would take, we were spending probably like 8 or 9 hours doing things by hand that we could have a program do. I like made a little presentation and because I don't want to do work if I don't have to. And this is a more efficient way. And it didn't get approved because that's not how we've always done it. And I'm like, you're like wasting company money by paying people like this amount. And it angers me. It like physically hurts me to know there's a better way to do something, but that's not how things have always been done. It's like, well, why have things always been done that way? Prior to that, you hadn't been doing it that way. Everything has to happen a first time. If you question things to a certain extent, and people, you're right, like people don't have an answer to it. People don't like feeling unsure in that moment, especially if they're in a position of authority.
The why is so beautiful because here are these kids that have these amazing ideas where there are questioning. And I think that's the disruptors. They say disruptive, but really the disruptors are the ones that have the ideas that kind of move things forward in a lot of ways. Like, this doesn't make sense. This is kind of inefficient,
Hmm
especially when you're younger, because you're surrounded by these adults, this big power differential, and you're just supposed to do what they say. And when you don't do what they say, they get upset and they feel like you're being disrespectful if you question.
hmm
It gets really, really complicated. So I love the idea of why. Things like procrastination, things like starting something but not finishing it. There's all these parts of executive functioning and we don't think about those parts. We just say, go do this thing. But when we break it down, there's so many steps, there's so many parts of it. Some kids might get started, but then their brain is hijacked and they are two steps into this activity and they're gone again.
hmm
You probably heard this too, is you could have been done by now.
Oh my God.
You've been complaining longer than you've been doing it. And I have to
Yeah.
say, I am embarrassed to say, Dani, that I have said that to my kid
Mm.
before when I was frustrated and I knew better and I still said it.
That's the thing to remember is like nobody's going to be perfect. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
nobody that it's the trying to be better than, trying to be aware. That awareness makes all the difference. And because so I'm a stepmom, and so we kind of have the same thing where there's how do I motivate you without shaming you? Because shame is such a powerful motivator for a lot of people, especially if you were, raised that way. And so you've got the stick. How do you do the carrot without training them that there has to be a carrot there in order for you to ever do this? Because eventually you're going to be an adult. And if there's no carrot, nobody providing you a carrot, are you going to be able to do this on your own?
It's fear. if your room looks like this, it must be a you problem, like it's a kid
Hmm.
problem. What I love about this conversation is it's giving adults the permission to question why.
Hmm.
Why does it have to be this way? That's kind of healing.
With Colin's room, it's like it gets disorganized, and there is this like clean your room like impulse. I remember as a kid where they're like, "We're having people over, clean your room." I'm like, "Why? Are they gonna be going in my room? Why does it matter what my room looks like?" Because they're worried about judgment if somebody does happen to go
That's
see it.
right, right. I understand this. I'm not blaming parents here because I've definitely had these feelings too where, oh, they're going to think I'm a bad parent.
Mm.
The homework's not
Oh.
done. What's wrong with me? Why can't I make them do this? Or they're walking around the classroom. Well, why can't, that means I'm not a good parent because they're not doing what they're supposed to. And like you said, the room, I would say that is absolutely one of the most painful. I don't know about you, Dani, but it would worry me constantly. What is wrong with me? I would say that to myself. I heard that all the time. What is wrong with you, Holly? What is wrong with you? So that
Damaging.
means something's wrong with me. I mean, it's
Yeah.
me. It's me. I love the idea when parents can look at this differently and say, why am I willing to damage my relationship with my child over this?
Hmm.
You can step back and say, what's important here? My bed's not made.
Yes, I feel like such a hypocrite. That's one of the other things is like I have a difficult time getting on him about things that we also have a hard time with. If our room isn't clean, telling him to clean his room does not feel great. I'm like very sensitive to hypocrisy. And so I think that there's some elements there that make me extra super empathetic and understanding to the plight of our 12-year-old. Being able to get in that headspace of asking why does this stuff kind of like pile up over here? Oh, I don't know. It's like, okay, well, that's not an answer. We're going to sit here until we think of something so we can work a little. I don't know. I'm like, I feel you. It's hard to think about it. Like, what would make it easier? Instead of being like, why isn't this happening? Going to what could we do to make it easier? Some of it was he didn't have enough storage in his
Mm.
room. Stuff ends up on the floor because if you slowly get things over time and you don't expand any kind of place to put those things if they don't have a home, then where are they going to go? I feel that. So then we got, some shelves and that did make it easier, but it took troubleshooting together to be able to kind of find that space.
Well, also your openness to the why instead of just being stuck. We talk
Hmm.
about kids being stuck, adults get stuck too. I'm over on the other direction.
Yeah.
I don't care. It was so painful about my room to the point where that is absolutely not a priority
Yeah.
for me, for my kid. I don't want to minimize that for other people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's not more important than my relationship with him.
Yeah.
And I am not going to fight with him about it. I'm just not going to do it. So making it more doable is more important than go do it. You didn't do it.
Yes, the biggest one of the if there's recurring challenges. So I do have in my book, The Anti-Planner, I have a thing called design your environment. And so like so much of the time, it's like if this behavior continues to happen, what if we assumed that this behavior was going to continue to happen? What would need to change in order to help with it? And so for him, if it's you can tell him a million times, hey, when you go shower, bring your clothes back to your room and put them in the hamper. Don't put them on the floor of the bathroom. But they always end up in the same spot on the floor in the bathroom. The answer was just get another hamper and put it at that spot in the bathroom.
They're going
And
there
now they're
anyway.
always in the hamper.
Like you said, environment. I totally agree. You're going to come back and talk to me about the how when you and I come back together. We talked about the why, which has to happen before the how. If you
Mm-hmm.
want differences in executive functioning, if you want to meet a child, whether you're a therapist or a parent, where they are, we need to step back and understand the why first. If we don't, it's not going to get better. And that child is going to carry the shame and guilt that they are wrong, they are bad, they are lazy, all those things that are so incredibly damaging. You have taken the idea of the planner, which most of us know is kind of funny in the ADHD space. I've spent more money. I'm going to design the front of it. If it's pretty enough,
Mm-hmm. If
then
I spend enough money on it.
I will carry it. I will take it wherever I go. It doesn't mean it's going to be open. So tell us, why is this completely different than anything else that has ever existed?
Because I am a tryhard and I can't help myself. I was putting all this energy into like how can I get more stuff done? Because I'm tired of being angry at myself all the time. I'm tired of getting in trouble at work. I'm tired of staying up late because I was not able to spend my time in the most efficient way. And I kept spending money on self-help books, on, coaching stuff, on workbooks and on planners and on little to-do things. Like every single thing was like, ooh, a new thing. This will be the thing that will help me get my life together, and it never stuck. Or I didn't try it at all. Like a lot of those
Oh,
little
yeah.
things you get at, when you're standing in line at the checkout at Barnes and Noble and there's like a funny little to-do list and I'm like, I'll totally use this. No, I kept falling into this trap of every time I felt like I failed at something, all it did was add more shame, add more baggage. And I was really tired of kind of like feeling that way. Initially, I was actually going to make like an ADHD planner and say, what is it that would actually make a planner work for someone like me? I started using these weird ways to get myself to work on it on the ADHD planner. And I looked at this pile of weird coping strategies and was like, wait a minute, this is what I'm actually doing. This is what's actually working is me rolling dice like I'm a D&D character and circling what number came up and what task that is. I'm doing these other coping strategies and sort of went, all right, well, there's something there because what if the system isn't having one system, it's having 100 systems? That actually would make sense because that's how I kind of function as it is. So what if I just leaned into that existing tendency? What ended up happening was I brainstormed all of these activities and strategies and games, challenges, ways to get things done when I didn't feel like it. And then I looked at it and I had this giant pile with like over 100 things. And I went, I can't give this to anyone because if someone gave this to me, I would be so overwhelmed, so intimidated. I would spend too much time looking for what to do, and I wouldn't do the thing because I would get like trapped by spending all this time figuring out which activity I wanted to do. And so it's like, there's got to be a way to organize this. And the first instinct is to be like, oh, I'll put all the activities in one section, all the strategies in one section, all the games in one section. And then I went, how are people going to know what they need? Being able to step back and go, all right, well, what is it that's causing the procrastination? And I brain dumped onto note cards every single thing I could think of that was a reason why, that was different why. So some of them were like, I feel hopeless, or I feel like I'm lacking accountability. I feel like I'm distracted. And so I had all these note cards and kind of like pushed them together into like, well, what means vaguely the same thing? And I found that there were very distinct categories of specific like resistances that were the why. And they kind of fell into these umbrella categories. So I ended up making the book as a navigation or the navigation system for the book to be these 5 different tabs that are like the stuck, overwhelmed, unmotivated, disorganized, and discouraged. Each of those tabs has sub emotions in the way that the feelings wheel has like happy, sad, angry, but then they have more nuanced emotions that are inside. There's betrayed is different than just angry in the same way that intimidated is a different flavor of overwhelm. Then decided it might be best to organize these strategies into how am I feeling? What is actually making it hard in the moment to get this thing done? And so I have to figure out how I'm feeling and find the why. The why am I procrastinating in order to find the how do I do something about it?
Yeah. What I really like about it too is visuals.
Yes.
We need visuals. It's not just tons of text
Oh
where
my
we're
God.
getting lost in it, like you mentioned earlier.
Boring.
Yeah, it is so beautiful how you take us through this journey. It is incredibly important for our mental health. Being the psychologist, maybe it's not me that's bad.
Hmm.
Maybe it's not me that's wrong or me trying to make everyone miserable. And thinking of how a child even would look at this, you have different versions for parents who are listening right now. I think it's a beautiful way for parents to work through with not only
Hmm.
themselves, but their kids too.
I talk to so many parents who, so there's like the cussing version and there's the not cussing version. And there are so many parents who tell me they had to buy another copy because their kid stole theirs. They're
Right.
like, I can't get mine back from my preteen. It feels like a big sister or like a friend talking to you instead of a like either like cold, distant, like a planner doesn't have a personality, but even some workbooks that might kind of have that, they feel like an authority figure talking to you and
Right.
not someone who's like in the trenches with you. I've been there, man. I know this is hard.
That's what's so lovely about it. It's relatable. It's not shaming, it's engaging and just accepting. I'm going to make sure that I have the link to both the cussing and the non cussing.
It's called the anti-planner, by the way. I don't remember if I said that.
It is the anti planner. I love it so much. It's right next to me right now. And I can't wait to talk to you next time.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me. Can't wait to chat.
Thanks, Danny. Bye bye. If you found this podcast helpful, I greatly appreciate it if you could take a second to give it a 5-star review. With your positive feedback, I can continue bringing you free, valuable information. As an extra thanks to you for sticking around and listening to the end, there are special gifts waiting for you in the show notes. You'll find links to free resources on supporting neurodivergent kids and teens with social interaction, emotional regulation, and more. So come on down to the show notes and get your free resources. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
All content provided is protected under applicable copyright, patent, trademark, and other proprietary rights. All content is provided for informational and educational purposes only. No content is intended to be a substitute for professional medical or psychological diagnosis, advice, or treatment. Information provided does not create an agreement for service between Holly Blanc Moses Crossvine Clinical Group, the interviewee, Holly Blanc Moses LLC, and the recipient. Consult your physician regarding the applicability of any opinions or recommendations with respect to your symptoms or medical condition or the symptoms or medical condition of your family member. Children or adults who show signs of dangerous behavior toward themselves and/or others should be placed immediately under the care of a qualified professional.